What happened to Amy Billig, a pretty 17-year-old who vanished without a whisper in 1974? Told that her daughter had been abducted by a renegade motorcycle gang, Amy's mother infiltrated the dangerous biker world, only to come up empty-handed time and time again.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're examining the most shocking times in history when someone confessed to a terrible crime to clear their conscience before they believed they would pass away.
It's the man police say made a deathbed confession, claiming to have killed someone and buried the remains here. Gerard died just weeks ago.
Michael Lee Wilson.
A jury convicted Wilson of murdering a Tulsa convenience store clerk. In February of 1995, a group of men robbed a Tulsa Quick Trip. They beat Richard Yost to death with a baseball bat.
Michael Lee Wilson took part in the 1995 slaying of Richard Yost in Tulsa, Oklahoma, his colleague at a store, earning him the death penalty. The execution was carried out in 2014. However, shortly before, Wilson told officials that he was part of a group that fatally shot Karen LaShawn Summers in 1994 at a Tulsa house party.
On the witness stand, Harjo testified he was a passenger in the car when Wilson did the drive-by shooting.
With no forensic evidence besides eyewitness accounts that were later recanted, DeMarco Carpenter and Malcolm Scott, teenagers at the time, had been convicted of the murder and sentenced to life in prison. In 2016, the duo were finally released from jail and were later found to be innocent at the hearing.
The state of Oklahoma convicted Scott and DeMarco Carpenter of the 1995 murder of Karen Summers. His sentence, life plus 170 years.
Sharon Diane Crawford Smith. In 2008, Sharon Diane Crawford Smith received the news that her kidney and heart disease were terminal. Before she met her demise, she had something to tell the police that she'd kept buried for decades. In 1967, Smith was working at the High's ice cream shop in Stanton, Virginia, where Constance Smoots Heavener and Carolyn Heavener Perry teased her for her sexuality. Smith eventually snapped and shot her colleagues. Before criminal proceedings took place, she passed away. She also alleged that a detective on the case, David Bocock, helped her cover it up by getting rid of the firearm. However, he died in 2006.
Do you want to know what I confessed in there? What my greatest sin was?
James Brewer. In 2009, Michael Anderson suffered a stroke. Believing his life was coming to an end, he and his wife Dorothy sold their belongings in Shawnee, Oklahoma, and traveled to meet police in Hohenwald, Tennessee. Anderson revealed that his real name is James Brewer and that he'd fatally shot his neighbor Jimmy Carroll in 1977 in the belief that he was trying to seduce Dorothy. After being arrested for the crime at the time, he jumped bail and fled the state, changing his name to Hyde. When Brewer wound up surviving the stroke, he was arrested and convicted of murder. Unidentified man. In 1946, Margaret Cook, who went by several other names as a sex worker, was fatally shot outside the Blue Lagoon nightclub in London. While there were witnesses, they lost sight of the murderer as they escaped in a crowded tube station. The killer was never found. In 2015, an unidentified 91-year-old man dealing with terminal cancer in a care home in Canada confessed to ending Cook's life after she stole money from him. UK police sent officers to speak to the man and discuss extradition to face criminal charges. However, due to his advanced age and illness, likely making him unfit to stand trial, the Canadian authorities were hesitant to agree to the extradition.
Denied. It's an unnecessary risk.
Larry Sherrard.
It was the deathbed confession that prompted this investigation. WLKY's Lauren Adams was there today as the excavation.
In 1989, 4 explorers were looking inside the Great Saltpeter Cave in Kentucky when they came across a grisly discovery. The group had found the remains of Thomas Jones Jr., who'd vanished in 1988 shortly after leaving prison. In 2014, Pamela Reinhart was caring for her uncle Larry Sherrard as he was dying from aspiration pneumonia. Yet hours before he succumbed, he confessed to her that he was part of a group that murdered Jones.
A letter written by a dying man prompts a police investigation. The author confesses to a crime and, according to police, provides a general area where they could find a body.
Reinhart got Sherrard to write a letter, which she took to the police after he passed away. He also detailed that he was involved with another murder, disposing of the body at a residence where he lived during the 1990s. Investigators soon evacuated the site and found fragments of bone. James Washington.
James Washington confessed to murder back in 2009 when he was on his deathbed. He suffered a heart attack and he thought he was going to die, except he didn't die, he got better, and then he had to face trial for the murder that he confessed to.
Already in jail after being sentenced to 15 years for attempted murder in 2006, James Washington further got into trouble following a seizure in 2009. As he was taken to the hospital, he didn't believe he had long left. So Washington told the guard watching over him that he killed Joyce Goodiner and left her body at an abandoned house in Nashville in 1995. In all that time, the police had no idea who'd done it. Washington's belief in his demise turned out to be greatly exaggerated when he recovered. He tried to recant his confession, which didn't work out too well.
I'm getting better! No, you're not. You'll be stone dead in a moment.
He was found guilty at the trial and convicted of Goodiner's murder.
That's an awesome fail.
Paul Branch. In 1974, high school student Amy Billig vanished as she hitchhiked to her father's art studio in Coconut Grove, Florida. For decades, the police and her family had no idea what happened on that fateful day.
We checked with hospitals and morgues and police departments all over the state and all over the country.
In 1997, Paul Branch, a former high-ranking member of the Pagans Motorcycle Club, was approaching his death when he detailed to his wife what happened to Billig. Branch claimed that the Pagans had abducted her and taken her to a party where she was assaulted and forcefully given substances, leading to her death. They then disposed of her body in the Everglades. While Branch did name one killer who was already in jail for murder, he denied any involvement when questioned by the police. Roy Heath. In 2010, after getting a tip-off, police searched a residence in London. With the aid of radar technology, investigators discovered human remains buried beneath concrete in the property's backyard. The police traced the whereabouts of the previous occupant, Roy Heath, who was staying at a hospice with a terminal illness. After several interviews, Heath confessed.
All right, I confess, I did it!
The body belongs to Mohammed Taki, who was last seen in 1998. Heath admitted he'd fatally strangled Taki. 13 days after revealing he was a killer, Heath passed away before charges could be issued and before a motive could be discovered. Henry Alexander. In 1957, black driver Willie Edwards Jr. vanished in Montgomery County, Alabama. Several months later, his body washed up on the Alabama River shore. However, decomposition made it difficult to figure out what caused his death. In 1976, the case was reopened as members of a local Ku Klux Klan chapter were suspected of having been involved. Yet, with a lack of evidence and an unknown cause of death, nothing was proven. But that changed in 1992, when one of the accused was dying from lung cancer. Henry Alexander admitted to his wife that he had lied to his Klansmen that Edwards had made a pass at a white woman, leading to them forcing him to jump off a bridge to his demise.
It's true that I've never given a second thought to anyone that I've let die, but I take no pleasure in it. Like a truly evil man would.
Satoshi Kirishima.
His is often seen near wanted posters for members of the Japanese Red Army, the Nihon Sekigun, the far-left terrorist group later joined by many of Kirishima's anti-Japan front compatriots after their organization collapsed.
In 2024, construction worker Hiroshi Uchida checked himself into a hospital in Fujisawa, Japan, as he received care for terminal cancer. Yet, he then told staff that since he didn't have long left, he wanted to live under his real identity, Satoshi Kirishima. For 49 years, he was a wanted fugitive after being involved with the extremist group East Asia Anti-Japan Armed Front, which killed targets with explosives. By 1975, the majority of the group had been arrested and they were disbanded. Kirishima had managed to avoid capture under a pseudonym. Within days of his arrest, he passed away. However, DNA tests compared to relatives posthumously confirmed that Uchida was, in fact, Kirishima.
I can remember it so clearly because of the shock of it all. We know who Kirishima is now because he said so himself, but I still want him to atone for his crimes.
Margaret Gibson. The 1922 murder of prolific silent film actor and director William Desmond Taylor remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in Hollywood history. Even with multiple suspects being considered, the investigation was botched, leaving the case officially unsolved to this day.
When the police arrived on the scene, there were various people all over the house.
The studio personnel were running around, making off with all important letters, documents, possible evidence.
More than 4 decades after the crime, however, Margaret Gibson, a Hollywood actor who had worked with Taylor early in his career, made a shocking confession. As Gibson slowly passed away on her kitchen floor after a heart attack, the then 70-year-old owned up to shooting and killing Taylor.
And she went on to say that she had shot and killed a William Desmond Taylor.
With zero physical evidence left from the case and a lack of apparent motive, there was no way to verify Gibson's sensational claim. Mark Chopper Reed. One of the most notorious criminals to ever come out of Australia, Mark Chopper Reed lived a large chunk of his adult life in prison.
Through his stage shows, his books and a very successful feature film, he became Australia's favourite crook. But for all the mythology around Chopper, the truth is what he did in his lifetime was monstrous.
The infamous gang member spent time behind bars for crimes such as armed robbery, kidnapping, and arson, but always somehow evaded a murder conviction. While serving his time, Reed contracted hepatitis C, and years later he was diagnosed with liver cancer.
You see that on the camera? That's the tumour. Look at that. That's a pretty big tumour, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a big tumour.
Look at the size of the bastard.
Perhaps realizing that his time on Earth was slowly coming to an end, he sat for an interview with 60 Minutes Australia, just 16 days before he died. During the interview, Reed casually admitted his involvement in the deaths of 19 people, describing the details with an astounding lack of remorse.
I don't know why, and as I sit here now, I couldn't care less. I mean, why?
Did why ever matter to you?
Why? It had nothing to do with it.
Naaman Diller. The most expensive heist in Israeli history occurred in 1983, when the Museum for Islamic Art was robbed clean of items worth tens of millions of dollars. One of these was a custom-made pocket watch for Marie Antoinette, estimated at about $30 million.
Probably the collection's most famous watch is Berger's Marie Antoinette, made for the French Queen.
It was prepared to her. She was, executed before she could enjoy it.
The dastardly heist was carried out by Israeli criminal Naaman Diller. Diller had fled Israel after the crime and settled in the U.S., where he died in 2004. Just before his death, he confided in his wife about everything and left the rest of the stolen collection in her possession.
Diller, on his deathbed 4 years earlier, had confessed to her that the priceless antique watches scattered around their Los Angeles home, including the Marie Antoinette, were his catch from raiding the museum that night.
The 25-year-old case was finally solved after Diller's widow tried selling some of the items back to the museum, and the authorities were tipped off. Christopher Smith. Between 1975 and 1980, the Yorkshire Ripper claimed the lives of 13 women in the English areas of Manchester and West Yorkshire.
Over a period of 6 years, all of these women were murdered by the same man. 13 families' lives torn apart by Peter Sutcliffe.
When 26-year-old Joan Harrison was killed in 1975, her murder was initially attributed to the notorious killer. But after his arrest in 1981, he was eliminated as a suspect.
Sutcliffe had been ruled out of the Joan Harrison investigation, and detectives were back to square one.
From there, it would take 30 years for the case to come to resolution. In 2008, Harrison's death was linked to 60-year-old Christopher Smith. Smith had terminal lung cancer and recently had his DNA sample taken after he was arrested for drunk driving. With his impending death looming, Smith penned a rambling letter in which he confessed to Harrison's murder and pleaded for forgiveness.
We found a note, which to my mind is clearly a confession note, and it's significant for me that he wrote that letter the day before he died. He talks about being remorseful for things that he's done.
He passed on a few days later. Hannah Quick. In 1980, Hannah Quick was the landlord of a townhouse in Brooklyn, New York, that got burned to the ground in February of that year. The fire led to the unfortunate deaths of some of the tenants.
3 men, Raymond Mora, William Vasquez, and Amari Villalobos, were arrested and later convicted of setting a fire that killed a mother and her 5 young children in a Park Slope apartment at 695 Sackett Street.
When she was interviewed by police, Quick claimed to have seen 3 men walk out of the house around the time of the fire. The 3 men, Raymond Mora, Amari Villalobos, and William Vasquez, were convicted. Mora died in prison, whereas the other 2 spent over 30 years incarcerated for the incident.
They also found the building owner, Hannah Quick, who accused the men, was a known substance abuser and habitual liar who admitted to family members she sent 3 innocent men to prison.
Years later, on her deathbed, Quick confessed to her daughter that she lied about seeing the men. The case was overturned and the men were exonerated of the crime.
Today I feel that if I die this afternoon, I'll be able to go to my tomb and rest in peace because my name has finally been cleared.
After all these years in prison, yeah, I feel great.
Christine Kett. The death of 18-year-old Christine Kett in her Dayton, Ohio home was a mystery that lingered for years. In January 1867, Kett's body was found by her brother, who immediately alerted their neighbors and the authorities. While police sorted through the crime scene, Kett's mother, whose name was also Christine, arrived at the house and was inconsolable.
Pretend! What is it?
Too inconsolable, as many onlookers noted. The case remained unsolved until years later when Mrs. Kett became sick and was at the point of death. On her deathbed, she admitted to killing Christine in a fit of rage.
Please, talk to me. Don't try to be brave, Melly. Yell all you want, there's nobody to hear.
Mrs. Kett swore her son to secrecy until his own time came, but after her death, he notified the police. Frank Thorogood. On July 3, 1969, Rolling Stones co-founder Brian Jones was found dead in the swimming pool of his Sussex home.
Brian Jones is found dead in his swimming pool at around midnight on the night of the 2nd of July, 1969, at his country mansion, Cotchard Farm.
His death was ruled by authorities as an accidental drowning, but that didn't stop multiple theories from popping up in the following days. One of the more credible ones involved construction worker Frank Thorogood, who was recommended to work in Jones's house by the Stones' chauffeur, Tom Keelock.
Brian was having a lot of refurbishment done on the house, and Frank was doing that refurbishment, but he was actually living in an apartment above the garage attached to Brian's house.
Thorogood, who last saw Jones alive, allegedly told Keelock on his deathbed that, quote, "It was me that did Brian. I just finally snapped," end quote. With both men now dead, and Keelock later denying the confession, there's likely no way of knowing if Jones's death was really an accident. Alice Mock. In November 1986, 76-year-old Alice Mock made a confession to her neighbor as she lay on her deathbed. Mock recounted that in 1975, a false allegation she made sentenced a man to jail for 15 years. The man, Wayman Camille Jr., stayed over at Mock's apartment after a drunken night out. Mock robbed Camille when he passed out, but then she cried out for help, alleging that he had robbed and assaulted her. She claims to have been afraid Camille would find out about her theft. Mock's confession exonerated Camille, who was released after spending 12 years of his 15-year sentence. Geraldine Kelley. Geraldine Kelley lived with her husband John in Ventura, California, where they worked as motel managers. In 1992, Kelley told her 2 estranged children that John had been struck and killed in a car accident. With no reason to question her story, they accepted it. It wasn't until Kelley was dying of cancer in 2004 that the truth was revealed. On her deathbed, Kelley confessed that she had killed John, reportedly because he was violent towards her. She kept his body in a storage unit and even shipped it along with her when she moved from California to Massachusetts. An official in the latter state described the entire situation as, quote, "very bizarre." And frankly, we couldn't agree more. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. Christian Bonkowski. The Brabant Killers were a notorious gang of armed robbers who terrorized Brabant, a former province of Belgium. Their violent activities resulted in the deaths of 28 people from 1982 to 1985. The group usually comprised of 3 core members: the Giant, who was thought to be their leader, the Killer, and a getaway driver called the Old Man. After the Brabant killers suddenly vanished in 1985, police were unable to officially charge anyone with the crimes. In 2017, a man came forward claiming that his brother, a retired policeman named Christian Bonkowski, had confessed to being the Giant on his deathbed 2 years earlier.
He made this confession on his deathbed 2 years ago, and the man's brother has just revealed the information.
While it initially seemed like a breakthrough in the case, the claim was later disproved through forensic DNA. Are there any other disturbing deathbed confessions that we missed? Let us know below.